owned quite a few cars over the years, around the mid-20s, high 20s, around that number. Through this series, I'm going to be taking you through all of the cars that I've owned. I still have 5 of them currently. Talking about the car, whether I made money, all of that kind of stuff. Whether I sold it, whether it was crashed, whatever. I got a job when I was 14 and 9 months working at Big W. I saved up and spent every dollar I had on buying a VE Ute. It was a bright green manual SV6 Ute, and I was so proud of this car. You know, it was my first car. I didn't have any debt. I thought it was the bee's knees until it started having problem after problem after problem. Even when I was on my L's trying to learn how to drive manual with it. The first problem I had was super common, timing chains. Every VE owner knows about this, but this car only had 60,000 Ks on it, so that was pretty poor. This was my only car that I ever bought from a dealership, so luckily it was all covered under warranty, but that was just the beginning of the problems that I had with this thing. Kept having this misfiring issue, and I got the plugs done, leads, inlet manifold gasket. It had everything, the chains done, it still had it done, had all of the fuel lines and the whole car replaced, and it was still happening. That was the last time I bought from a dealership, and I am really not looking to do it again. I ended up selling this car at the time for around $19,000. So I did lose $1,000, but it had a lot of receipts, which the dealership paid for. Not really the dealership's fault, but it wasn't a good experience, and I've had much better luck vetting my own cars and looking around for myself. I did go camping with the Ute for a few times, and when it was working, it was a very nice car to drive. I understand that mine was a lemon. The vast majority of VEs are not like this, you know. And keep in mind, this was back in 2013. This was only a 4-year-old car, so it was really surprising. My next car was this. This is probably a bit of a surprise. It was a N15 Pulsar. This is probably one of the only times that I've sort of gone off the reservation a little bit. I was so sick of the VE. I just wanted something reliable. So I looked up, searched everywhere for just the most reliable car just to get me to and from work. So I went on to car sales, saw the first one and bought it asking price. Didn't care about any of that. I just wanted it, and it was a really, really great car. It had an SR20 in it. This was my first car that I sort of got involved in with cars. I learned how to do things. You know, I'd never taken a wheel off a car. So I ended up lowering this car, I painted the rocker cover. I ended up doing heaps of stuff, learned how to service, pulled the interior out and steam cleaned it, you know, all of the things that you do as an 18-year-old. And I really, really enjoyed this car, and it was so good. And I loved it all the way until I wrote it off. I was driving home from Melbourne one day, and I was going up the Westgate on-ramp, and I wasn't paying attention for 2 seconds, and I hit a steel tray Ute in the back, only at about 10 Ks an hour, but his tow ball went straight through the rad support. These aren't expensive cars, it wasn't really worth fixing. When I was watching my poor car go up on that tow truck on a Friday afternoon in the middle of peak hour traffic in the city, the poor truck driver felt so sorry for me that we pulled into a servo and he bought me a bag of chips. And I remember that, you know, that was, oh God, it would have been 19 back then, so that would have been 2016, and yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday, so thank you to that truck driver. I was absolutely devastated. This was such a good car. I really, really liked it, and if I hadn't stacked it, I probably would still own this car, and I'd probably buy another one again. Don't let the styling or sort of grandma aspect of them fool you. These SR20 models are quick cars. There is absolutely no denying that, and it was a fun car. It was great on fuel. I just really loved it. Before I crashed the car, I was sitting at uni, and obviously nothing was going in my head, and all I was doing was thinking about cars, and I was just browsing on Gumtree, and then I saw something that would change my life forever. It was this, a 1989 Series 1 manual VN Commodore. Now I saw this car, and I knew that I had to have it. It was a factory manual, which is pretty rare. It was pretty tidy, and I just saw that ad and I thought, no, that is the car for me. And I messaged him immediately, and he got back to me saying it was already sold, and I was absolutely shattered. And anyway, went home. Next day comes around, and I get a message in the morning saying, hey mate, sale's fallen through. If you come take it for $1,500, you can have it. Absolutely beside myself. And as I looked into it more, I realized it was actually in Albury, and I am in South Victoria. So I thought, and I had uni tomorrow. Took the day off uni, I took a bus by myself all the way up to Albury, and bought it sight unseen. Met him at the train station, gave him the money, and next thing I know, I'm sitting in a VN at 1 in the morning on the border of New South Wales. The oldest car I'd ever driven was the Pulsar. Everything else in my family, the VE, everything else I'd driven before was new. So this was a whole new world to me, but it was an absolute joy to drive. It was such a good car, and in that 10-hour roughly drive all the way back home, not one issue. When the radio actually didn't work and I had no phone reception, so I was driving in total silence for that time, so I had lots of time to think about my life. I absolutely love this car. I put it on club plates, it had swirlies, I lowered it. I actually put VN Calais interior into it and pulled the old seats out because they were really rough. Painted the bumpers black because, you know, that's what you do when you're a P-plater with a VN. I did buy some 3-piece Venetians for it, which I retained and put on my red VN now. For all, I remember driving it, and for some reason I had it in my head that it needed to be sold, and I listed it on Facebook, and somebody came immediately and bought it. At the time, I admit, mate, I was a little bit scared that it was just going to turn into a skidder. However, I have been proved wrong, and one of my followers, Connor, does own this car now, so that is very, very cool. He still has it to this day, and he really, really has looked after it, and that warms my heart that that car went to a good place and it wasn't just a skidder, because back then that's what these cars were, and for some still are. Alright boys, the next one hurts big time. While I still had the VN, I saw this for sale. White manual VL turbo wagon. My memory may be failing me here, I believe it was $3,000. As soon as I got the reply from the bloke, got in my car, went all the way to rural Victoria. It was like the VL that everyone would want. I rolled up this huge roller door, and there it was, a VL covered in farm dust, exactly like you'd want it. Looking back on it, I cannot believe that I decided that it would be a good idea to drive that 2 hours home, but I did. It was such good fun to drive, and I've actually got a video which I'll attach now. I remember driving that thing like it was yesterday, and I cannot believe that I sold that car. It only had 130,000 Ks, something like that, and yeah, look, it did need a lot of work, but why did I sell that thing? And the reason I didn't do too much on this VL is at this time I had it. I still had the Pulsar and I still had the VN. I was already becoming a hoarder and I didn't have the space for it, I didn't have a shed, but I needed it anyway. Obviously I was living with my mum at the time, and I remember seeing her face when she saw the VL, and I was so excited about it. It did kill an alternator on the way home, and we had to push start it on a down ramp onto the M1. I ended up having to stop at a servo and buy a new battery just to give it enough juice to drive home, and it was such, yeah, I can't believe that I did that, and I wouldn't be doing that again. This car is probably the one that I regret selling the most. In the next video, I'll tell you what I sold it to buy, and it's just ridiculous. So there you go. I hope you guys liked this video. I still will be doing all the other videos on the cars that I own now, but I thought it might be interesting to show you some of what cars I owned in the 2016, 2017. Entirely different car market back then. The VLs were worth nothing, VNs were worth even less. Did get just a little taste of cheap old cars, and I'm so happy I did, because the prices they are now, you couldn't be doing the same stuff that I did. So